Here we go. Okay. Loretta, I'm Kelly and I'm co-hosting with my sweet friend Ivana here. And we are just so thrilled to have you. We just had an amazing book club discussion and we want answers from you. So we're so happy that you're here with us.
Oh, and thank you for having me. It's wonderful. I hope it wasn't too too chaotic a discussion.
No, it was riveting. We're so
Good.
thankful for a book that raises such, great questions. So
Good. Okay, good.
congratulations on your debut. We were all just blown away that this is a debut, and we all were so just captivated by your writing, and we're just so thrilled for you that this has become a bestseller. It was a book of the month club pick, like all of the things. I'm sure it's been amazing for you.
It has been incredible. It's an amazing um thing to have a book that was once an idea and then also people talking about the characters is such a surreal experience, but something I enjoy immensely. So yeah, I'm so happy for everyone, my editor and my agent, everyone that's like before anyone, it's quite a out there idea in a weird, strange kind of way. And they just were with me from the start. So that was a huge relief because I was a bit worried that maybe, you never know what's going to work.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique structure and kind of challenges the standard ways of how we read a book or like what a reader is expecting, and you just caught everybody off guard in the best way.
Oh, good.
To start us off, would you talk a little bit about your inspiration for Finding Grace?
Yeah. So I think, with all good ideas, they kind of come out of nowhere, but they begin to kind of find each other. And I had another book I was writing at the time with this egg donor idea. And then I had this idea of the first chapter, and they were both kind of swimming around my brain. And then I sort of realized that those two ideas together were actually the same story. And there were little things along the way that definitely began to kind of nourish um, my ideas. Things like I got a letter in the post that wasn't meant for me. It was to do with fertility, but it wasn't to do with, it wasn't the same scenario, obviously, but it was a letter that had nothing to do with me. It was different names, it was different things, and I was like, this is not for me. So that definitely was was played in my was on the hard drive. And then I was reading there was an article in a newspaper in the UK about a woman who lost her entire family. And I just thought that was such an interesting starting point, like what you do if you don't just lose someone, but you lose everything in such a kind of brutal. She'd lost her family in a tsunami, and I just thought, gosh, that is so. Um, it really stuck with me. So I think all these kind of themes and ideas began to kind of marinate in my head, and that became Finding Grace. And I think that the only difference is that, obviously, I don't know if some of you might know this because I've said it before, is that I wrote the whole thing in the third person before I wrote it in Anna's voice. And then I missed her. Like I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, like this book doesn't work without her. It's her book, it's her story. And actually, she's the part of it I love to play with the most because she gave me the most power and like reassurance. And she was just so fun to write with. So I went back and I just thought, what if I tell all from her perspective? And as soon as I did that, it became the book you have now.
That was my next question, is how did you decide to write from Honor's vantage point? So that's a really
Well, because the other one was boring. I was not interested. I was so annoyed when I read it. I thought, oh my gosh, this is not going to work. And then I was sitting on an airplane. I remember it very well. And my husband was like, "What are you? Uh, you're sort of away with the fairies. And I said, yeah, I know. I've realized I've got to I write the whole book again. And he's like, what? Um, so yeah, so it was really worth it. And no writing time is ever wasted, it's just more practice.
Yeah. What did your writing process look like for the book? Like how long did it take you to write and kind of in what um format did you write? Are you a pantser or a plotter? And were there any other
I'm a
like
big
major
plotter.
you're a big plotter.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't leave things to chance. I studied novel writing sort of originally as a sort of a kind of hobby, and then it became sort of a passion, and then it became an obsession. Um, and I really need it because I have so many, I'm an ideas person. I can give, a lot of my friends give me their scripts or books, and I love thinking of insane ideas or brilliant ideas, and not brilliant ideas, but as in like in a child's book, for example, I'm like, well, why don't you do, those kind of things. I like things to be kind of illuminated, and I like to think, well, if they're meant to be this way, let's flip it the other way. That's my initial kind of instinct is, well, just because that is generally a so and so, why can't we just do it that it's the so and so? I like to change the, even if it's simple, it can be the brilliance of changing a boy to a girl just because they see the world in that moment in a certain way. And, what if they just little things that really change everything, changing the perspective to honor is a simple idea, much harder to execute, but just a simple change, but that turns out to have a kind of spotlight and a kind of, um, sort of, I use that word brilliant because it seems shiny to me. And yeah, I can't remember your question now, sorry.
No, that was it. Just about your writing process and like
Yeah.
how long it took and were there if you're a pantser or a plotter. So it sounds like you've really kind of you outline and kind of go as your
Yeah.
outline leads.
Yeah,
So
I'm deeply insecure about my when they're not, I'm writing my next book now, and I'm always fearful of something going wrong. I don't think, I'm not as much as, I have a book, and I'm still not confident that I can hold these worlds together. It's really frightening. So if I didn't have structure, if I didn't have other books to always go back and look at, I would fail miserably. Um, so I really like this the security of plot. It's like, as I always say, like I'm swimming around, and it's this island that I go back to after I've been for a long swim, and I write some insane idea and it falls apart, and I have to go back and think, oh, that's that I have to accept that's not going to work. But at the same time, I also, you know, it following a structure doesn't mean you follow the way someone else has done it, like the opening of my book. Okay, people would say, oh, that's not a love story, but I would disagree and say, well, it's not really how it starts, it's how it ends. And I like that sort of, that's what kept me kind of going with it, was that actually that was more realistic to me than something starting like this and ending like this. It was, that's not been the stories I've heard in my life have never been like that. So I wanted to kind of take a risk with it, really.
yeah, I think that was such a fascinating way to start the book and definitely grabs readers' attention. And we were all talking about how, we were reading it and we like had to stop and like it stops you in your tracks and you have to reread or back the audiobook up and start again because you're just like, what did I just hear? Um
Yeah.
if we could jump to the end of the book, we were talking about that a lot in our book club discussion, the ending and how it is it is neat and tidy for Tom. And did Tom deserve a happy ending because he had just made some atrocious decisions, and lies and things like that, and it kind of fell into place for him. Did you ever have a different ending in mind where Tom kind of gets like his reckoning for like the lies that he had told, or does it feel Yeah, what does it feel like to you, or what was your thought process with that?
I was very I was always, it wasn't so much that it was like Tom has to do this or has to that. It was more that I felt so deeply what he had been through. And I had the sort of privilege of seeing him before, and I knew what he was like before. And I knew that these certain set of circumstances that was so catastrophic and tragic would change a person, and they can change good people into, I don't think Tom's bad at all. I really don't. I think that when something tragic has happened to you, you're not the same person, and it can take a long time to figure out who you are. So I never wanted to give him kind of to me it was more important that he he was I it is very important to me that I could still love Tom and understand how he got where he got to. I can't, I've never lost my child, I've never lost my spouse. I can't imagine what that would do to a person, but I've seen people and lose themselves. And I think that it takes a certain kind of person like Grace to see that there were a certain set of circumstances that caused such a horrific pain in this person that he had not dealt with, that he could not even begin to deal with without his mother-in-law, without his child. And, you know, when you have a child, you don't have, I mean, he was a single parent with this child. That was just how he decided to live his life. It's the perfect kind of numbing agent to looking at yourself because there is no time. So I never wanted to judge him for the decisions because I'm a mom. I know that there are moments where I'm holding the door shut. I've got my trying to plug my phone in. I'm trying to answer the phone and I'm trying to do this. And I think, God, imagine if I actually had a real problem in this moment. What would I do? And I always came back to that. And to me, I don't, I think it was so important for him to have a second chance at life because of how tragic his life had started in the book, and to come to know that there is forgiveness out there for things. I don't think I've ever met anyone that was simply just nice and nothing else. You know, someone said this to me recently, which was, I don't write nice characters because I've never met a nice person. And at first I was like, what? And then I realized that nice is just not the word. We all have flaws, we all have insecurities and weaknesses. And it would never feel right to me as a writer to write someone who was in any way nice and perfect. But I do think for what happened to him, I was really proud of like the way he began to look at his life and unpacked the basement, talked about the child that he'd lost for the first time with a woman that he had learned to love and trust. And he kind of put his ego aside and put his fear aside and went for it. And I couldn't imagine him starting the book alone and ending it alone. It would have been so cruel. And I've never seen that in my life. So to me, it would have seemed sort of, you know, I do believe, I know widowers have a much harder time finding love again. I read something about this recently, because they have less close friends generally, fewer close friends, and widows move on much quicker. And that really stuck with me, even, you know, all these years later, um, with Tom. And I'm not writing Tom anymore, but I do feel immensely protective of him, the kind of like Annie does, because when you see someone walking around that is so wounded and you're sort of reading them the this is the moral compass, you must follow this. And you'd probably think, wow, what where did my where did the moral ambiguity begin really for Tom? You know what I mean? It's all incredibly unfair, and it's not an excuse, but it's definitely an understanding as to how and why those decisions could have happened, and why they happened. And that's what I love about writing, is that you get to know the why. If we didn't know what happened to Tom, I wouldn't have been able to forgive him. But knowing why and what happened to him in his life, I could feel his pain and sort of thinking, I can't lose another person. It's just too much. And loss manifest, he obviously really did have his family die, his whole entire family die. But to lose someone, it becomes the same to me. Loss was the same. It's just that kind of um what's the word? It's the belief that something's the same. Once you have a belief in your head, the loss of someone and the loss of somebody else, they feel the same, even though they may not be the same. But to him, they felt the same.
I love that answer so much. I think that the way that you kind of provoke the reader with some questions about what are our expectations for somebody experiencing deep grief, what do we place on them as far as like a timeline of when it's okay to move on and when it's not, and what should that look like, and these stipulations around moving forward. And I think that you touch on those issues in a really just thought-provoking way. I loved your response to that.
Did you have a favorite character? Because Tom is clearly so close and dear to your heart. Did you feel the same way about Honor too? And even the mother-in-law was such a interesting additional character. And the
I,
friend
I
group too. I know everybody had a special.
yeah. Yeah, I loved Colette. Took me a long time to love her. I was very, Honor was my co-pilot writing this book. So, I was very protective of her, but I also knew there was a reason why she'd acted that way as a mother. I don't believe people are just horrible. I just don't. Um, and I really love her. I really am happy for her that she was able, and her and Tom obviously they both lost their spouse and they both lost their child. And obviously, I don't explicitly say that in the book, but it really was sort of one of those things where they got to come together and were living together, and she had an opportunity to be with her grandchild. And, it was really important to me that they weren't alone. Um, and and I think I really love Annie, because Annie is so opinionated. I'm quite opinionated about certain things, and she is. And I think that she was my kind of sanity thermometer, because I would sometimes be, you can't fall in love with your characters too much. So if I was too team Honor and too team Tom, she would come in and start sort of yapping in my brain and say, you can't let them do this. It's absolutely preposterous. You can't do this. And I think, oh, okay, there she is. So she was really sort of on the seesaw, and I would always run things by her all the time. Is this too much? But I like the fact that she, again, she could forgive him because she was there. She was there the whole time. So she was my kind of fly on the wall even before I arrived, um, with Honor and with Tom.
She was special for sure.
One of the other questions we were talking about in our book club was maybe like a conspiracy theory, but are Honor and Grace somehow like long lost twin sisters? Because you mentioned in the book that multiple times that Honor was adopted. So we were like, well, maybe,
No, Grace was adopted.
or sorry,
Grace was
that Grace,
adopted,
I'm
not
sorry,
Honor.
that
Yeah.
Grace was adopted. So we were
Yeah.
like, well, maybe.
No, they aren't, I'm
Okay.
afraid. That would have been a whole other book in itself.
Yeah.
Um, but I yes, I no relation. But someone
Okay.
else has actually asked me that, and they were like, I really thought I was onto this, and I was wrong. Um, but it wasn't an idea that crossed my mind. It was a thought that people might think, oh, it's got to be, it has to be, which was really good. I was thrilled that that might be an option because then people might not, know what was coming.
Okay. That's what we thought, but we were like, well, we have to ask because maybe they are.
Yeah. No, maybe book three.
Nay, okay.
Um, yes, the sisters.
The
No.
sisters. Um, in regards to promoting your book, I can imagine that this was probably a really tricky book to like talk to somebody about or like to try to get them to pick it up because you can't give away too much. How did you strike that balance of like saying like, hey readers, you should read this book because XYZ? How did that go for you?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's not something I really fell upon until I had to then sell the book and like to not to the publishers but to the world. And there were a lot of meetings about how we were going to talk about this book, how we could talk about it. We had some great reviews, but I couldn't really post them and people couldn't really use them because they would give away the first chapter, which was really important to me, um, to give people the full experience of what I was trying to create. And but it's also very hard to comp. So I can't say it's been easy to talk about the book before people have read it, but I do think that we found a way to at least intrigue people. Um, and I think it's one of those books that people will talk about to their friends and it'll be word of mouth. People will either love it or it won't be for them. And, I love book recommendations um, from people. I find them the most sort of fulfilling, if you know what I mean. It always feels more, I don't know, when someone's given, 11, 12 hours of their life to something and then says, yeah, this is worth your 11, 12 hours with no, skin in the game. It's just, this is great. Um, so I sort of, I still don't know how to talk about it.
Did you
Oh,
have
as you can
any,
tell.
well, yeah, I think, did you have any say in the jacket copy or like the publisher's description of the book? Because I didn't read that. I usually don't. And I read the book first and then I went back and to the description and I'm like, oh no, do they say, this in the first, do they talk about the first chapter in the publisher
No,
description? And they don't. And I was so proud because I do feel like some books will give away like 75% of the book just within the publisher's synopsis. So did you
yeah.
have say kind of,
Yes, I
okay,
wrote that. I wrote that
okay.
with my editor and a few other people, but and my agent was really, she knew from the beginning, like we cannot give away because also it's as much as it's such a big moment, it really isn't something that actually is what the book is about. It's about loss and it's about grief and it's about unexpected events in our lives, but actually it is a tragic event. The telling of that event is not it's not the kind of the meat of the book. So it was just, a book has to start somewhat somewhere, and anything at the beginning of the book is just to get the plot in motion. So you're looking at something that is going to show why these characters are going to go in this direction, not over there, and why they're not just going to live like any other week of their life. So we never really thought it was going to go on there because obviously everyone else had read it blind. So they liked that experience because there was no synopsis, obviously, there was a synopsis when was there a synopsis? I think I sent through, I can't remember, but there was a synopsis later on, and it was never something I ever included in any copy.
And just like the synopsis, there's been I've seen a couple different covers of the book. And do you have input on that too? Did you, make that decision?
Yeah, we all worked together on the cover.
Mhm.
We had a lot of ideas, and there were some other great covers. And the cover that we ended up going with was actually an image that I had met an artist in at at the school gates, and we just started chatting, and she showed me some of her work, and it was incredible. Like I just couldn't believe what she was showing me, and she uses embroidery as her sort of, she's a visual artist. She uses a lot of embroidery, and some things are huge and some things are very little. And she showed me this picture on her phone, of two, they were sort of faced away from each other, these two women, and I couldn't get it out of my head
Mhm.
about 6 months. So it went into my brain. I thought, wow, that's really interesting. Then she kept kind of popping up, and then about a year later, I realized that, oh, that's meant to be the cover of my book. And I rang her up and I begged, and she was amazing. She did a whole. That's all obviously real. This one that I think you all have is this one.
Yeah. Hmm.
So that is by a Parisian artist. It's a real embroidery that I have in my house, and she just totally got it. She got everything about what I was trying to do, and she just it was an amazing experience to do that cover with her, and I feel very lucky because I love the cover. I keep loving it, and that was a great experience. But it was all of us with the font and where the things went. It was not an easy picture to navigate because you can't really cover much of it, like you can't put things wherever you want because the image is there. So that's how that happened.
Beautiful. And how special that you have, you know, part of that at
And
your.
she gave me the original, which
Oh,
which
wow.
yeah, is at the Framers as we speak.
Wow.
Um, so that was very touching and extremely she's wonderful.
Oh, I think Michelle has a question. Michelle, did you want to ask?
I did. First of all, thank you for spending your Sunday evening with us. We really appreciate it. I think a lot of us have garnered a deeper insight into the book, as I typically do. But I was curious, how far along in your writing process did you know that the explosion was going to start in chapter one? Because that to me sets it apart from so many other novels.
Mhm.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
I knew always. I always knew I was going to start that way. Um, that whole idea of the attack and of losing those characters was always how I wanted to start a book. I didn't know it was going to be the egg donor book. But that was always there, always how I wanted to start. And I never thought it would be in the middle. I never thought it would be in chapter two. I knew I was going to end with that sentence 5, 6 years ago. I just thought how I don't know why. I really don't know why, but it absolutely came crystal clear to me when I was writing and thinking about it.
In the chat, Angel was wondering, aside from losing several people at once, does Anna and Chloe dying through a terrorist attack have any sort of significance?
Um, how do you mean? Sorry.
Like, I don't know, was the bomb like a metaphorical, is there something metaphorical about an explosion or a bomb, or like could you have done like a tsunami like you mentioned? And
Yes.
let me know if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, so
I
I was
Yeah.
just because choosing a terrorist attack is obviously kind of it's a hot take. It's a very, especially with our political climate, it's very like no one's really touching that. So I mean, they could have died in a car accident. There were so many other ways. So I was just wondering why you specifically chose, like if there was a reason why you specifically chose to do a terrorist attack.
Um when I was writing this book, there had been a huge terrorist attack in India. And it was one of the most tragic things I'd ever read. And I think that had a huge impact on why I made that decision. It was just very tragic. And you know, in England and in Paris, it was something that throughout my life was talked about a lot. And you know, it felt there would sort of, I could have made a choice to go down the story of why and how and what happened and why that incident happened there, or I could have told Tom's story, and I made the decision to turn right. But there are obviously stories on both sides. That's the thing about fiction. You can't do two, I believe. I think you have to choose a lane so that your reader believes, you know, story is one thing, plot is one thing, and story is your reader trusting you that you're going to tell a story in the way perhaps they're anticipating it structurally, and not, but also take them on a journey where they don't know what's coming, but at the same time stick to a story, deliver on the story, trust the writer in the story, but the plot should be unexpected.
Yeah, so a few years ago, I went to Ireland, and before I went, I was kind of researching, you know, what's cheaper flights, what are good places to go. And I actually, one of my places I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, so I wanted to go to London and do the whole, you know, and it popped up that like on USA.gov or some sort of huge website that London actually has, they're like in the red zone for like, they have more terrorist attacks than any other places in the world. Like it said it's not safe for Americans. And so I just was wondering, because it is set in Paris and also London, if that was maybe, you know, had something to do with it.
Yeah, it was, I mean, Honor was always French, and there was obviously a terrorist attack in France. There's been many, but there was one that happened. It was extremely, you know, they definitely, as a growing, I was a child, a teenager, an adult, and those things go on your hard drive, and I always want to kind of base something in my writing. It doesn't have to be me, it doesn't have to be my family, but I always want, you know, Margaret Atwood always says this, which is, I didn't make any of it up. All these things have happened. And I think that's a very good way to sort of secure you in your choices, but not necessarily be your choices for the story.
Let's see. Melissa has a question. She's curious about your choice of names, Honor and Grace, and if there's a significance with those.
There is a significance with those. And originally, Tom was called Will because I wanted them all to be sort of verbs. And I had to change it because Will and Grace. But yeah, I wanted them to be, you know, to honor, to grace, to have the will, to will oneself. But yes, Tom changed that. So yeah, that was they are very significant. Honor and Grace, they are yeah, they were always those names, and I was not willing to change either of those names. So that's the first person to ever ask me, so I'm extremely touched, Melissa. You've made my day.
Gold star, Melissa.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, obviously, Grace fits with the title and the whole process of Tom finding a new path. But yeah, that part made sense. The honor along with that, I was like, I kind of picked up a little bit on that. So yeah, that's nice to know that I wasn't adding something that wasn't there. I picked up on it. So.
Oh, good. I'm very pleased.
In the chat as well, Angel's wondering, what are some of your favorite authors or books?
Well, I have so I love contemporary fiction, but when I'm writing, I get very nervous that I'm going to start sounding like a contemporary of mine. So I'm very much, I go back to the kind of 20th century. I love a lot of 20th century writers, a lot of playwrights as well. I read a lot of short stories. The moment I'm reading a book called, let me just, where is it on? Just had it here. It's called sort of the, can't remember the exact, I literally just opened it. But it's about these twins. It's really interesting. But I read a lot of, I read very obscurely, which is why I can't get the answers out. But I like witty writers. You know, I love Noel Coward, I love Oscar Wilde, I love Edith Wharton. I reread a lot of the same books. I'm a huge believer that poetry is really the kind of best thing to read before bed for a writer. I love having, I read a lot of books all at once because I realized, well, I didn't realize actually, I listened to an author called Julia Whalen on her Audioberry. She did this really great talk called the Why. It's really a great podcast. I don't know if it's called a podcast, but it was an hour of her talking, and she basically reassured me that once you chose to become a writer, you kind of gave up reading as a hobby. Like, that's over for you, because as soon as I start reading, I start writing. So everything I read is going to impact on my writing. So that's why I'm always nervous about reading too much contemporary fiction of that moment, because I could start to envelop myself in, you know, it's insanity, but I'm very, very you know, you're very fragile when you're writing. So you want things, you want things, don't, don't by osmosis become you. I don't know. But yeah, I really like, I love 20th century voices. That's definitely something that I immediately sort of fall into buying in the bookshop.
Sorry, my computer is going a little
I
crazy
had a
here.
question. I was trying to find my little hand raising, but I couldn't look at it.
Go ahead.
So we're gonna pivot, going to the Friends table, if you will. That was the juicy storyline. And I kind of feel like I figured it out midway, but everybody's got that crazy friend. Where did that all fall in for you?
You know, Lauren was very she kind of she really was the kind of plot twist for me. In a sense, I knew I did know that she fancied Tom. I didn't know quite what she was going to do, but I really wrote alongside her, and it was also quite fun because Honor obviously didn't know, so I was sort of with Honor, but the friend of Honor that was a bit like, that's a bit strange. So she wasn't so much, you know, my plot is there, but my characters are extremely unruly, and the plot will stay the same, but those characters are always going to do what they're going to do. And I like that. I like letting them free and seeing what they're going to do. And it's one of the best parts about writing is the fact that you have, I have this with my new book now, which is like, I leave my desk, I'm thinking, this has gone so well. I type, 3 emails, I leave, and then I come back, and it's like sort of a bit like daycare. And then I come in, and then none of them are in the places where I left them. And I'm thinking, this is not what you were supposed to do. And now they're everywhere, and they're climbing up the wall. And I'm like, no, I need you to stay and do this exact thing. That's not how characters work for me. And I have to just accept that they're going to go wherever they're going to go. And I just have to watch them.
That's kind of like mom brain in general.
Yes.
Don't you think, though? It's very scattered, or you think you're on track and then suddenly you forget where you left your
Exactly.
sunglasses. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I liked it. I enjoyed it. As a thriller reader, that was kind of fun. Everybody
Yes,
likes the psychopath.
exactly. Yeah, no. She poor Lauren, I sort of feel bad for her really. She's sort of so what a mess.
One of the things we were talking about in our book club too, was the blurb from Chris Whitaker on your book. And we hosted Chris, I can't remember, after All the Colors of the Dark. But we're huge Chris Whitaker fans here. And so we saw that he had blurbed Finding Grace, and we knew nothing about the book. And so that's what got a lot of us initially to pick it up. So like, oh, if this has Chris's stamp of approval, like
Yes.
that's enough for us. How did that connection come about? How did you get this book into Chris's hands? And what is, to
That was nothing to do with me. He's obviously a fellow English person, but that had nothing to do with me. That was the team. Um, uh, we're part of I think we're part of the same agency, and we don't have the same agent, I don't believe, but you know, there's a lot of wonderful authors out there that know how hard it is. And he was one of those people that was incredibly generous and was really early blurber. He did that totally not knowing anything about me, about the book, about where it would go, about other authors that were blurbing the book. So it was incredible to get that.
I love that. He told us that Kristen Hanna blurbed All the Colors of the Dark, and he was talking about how much that blurb meant to him. And so it feels like a full circle moment that he can pass that on to, another author
Yes.
who,
And I remember getting my first request for a blurb, and my book wasn't even out yet. And I opened the thing and I said to my husband, "Oh my gosh, this is so unbelievable. Someone has just asked me to blurb their book." And he's like, "Now you've really made it."
I love that. Well,
The
then,
book wasn't even out. It was like, you know what, it's all gonna be fine. So I've never read a book so fast, and it was wonderful. So it was called Room 706. I don't know if you've seen that popping around. But yeah, it was a great opportunity to it was just it was a wonderful feeling. And authors are very nice and generous, and they we're quite similar people. I mean, we generally are quite similar, so in our different ways.
I'm wondering how your willingness to blurb books, like, does that kind of butt up against your desire to read only like older books so that it's not like infiltrating your thoughts? Or
I read that when I was really about to start book 2, and
okay.
I just finished book 1, so it was totally perfect timing.
Okay.
But I can always, you know, if it's a sort of not homework, so to speak, but I'm not doing it of my own kind of thinking, I can do it because I have a different kind of reason to go in and a different appreciation, and it's sometimes quite nice. I actually really enjoyed doing that because it wasn't about my book and me and the thing, and it was like, okay, this is something I get to do for other people. It was incredibly exciting, and it was such a great feeling to kind of send that email and say, oh, here's what I want to put on that book. It was great.
I love that. I think too, you're like the inability for us to come up with a comp for Finding Grace is a testament to like its uniqueness and like your strategy, and like that's must be working for you because there really is no book to really compare it to.
Yeah, still not. I still can't find one.
Of that, can you talk about your second book? We're dying to know anything you can say.
It's definitely got my DNA. It's a love story, but it's got a lot of grit, and I'm really enjoying it. I have to say, I had some hard months, and now I feel like, okay, I know I know exactly what this is, and I'm enjoying it. I'm really excited about it. And it took a long time to get Honor out of my head.
I'm
She's
sure.
extremely opinionated and very vocal about things. So it's great. I can't really say too much because again, my deep insecurities. But yes, I hope it carries on the way it's going, and I'm really enjoying it.
Well, that's exciting.
I don't know if we asked this before, but how long did it take you to write Finding Grace?
It took about 5 years, but it won't take me that long to do this one.
I was gonna say the timeline. Do you feel
Wait
like
that
the
long.
timeline, yeah, is a little trickier this time around?
I don't have a choice because I already sold it.
Yep.
So I I'm on a new schedule. It's not the same
Yeah.
schedule. And look, a book takes as long as it takes. I'm not a machine, but at the same time, there's always something good and a bit of pressure. But I had to learn a lot to write Finding Grace. I couldn't have done that book in that amount of time. But this one, I will. Yeah, I'm. I think it's going to take as long as it takes, but I hope it continues the way it is right now.
Well, we can't wait.
Oh, we got another question in the chat. I know the names were intentional. Was the title always Finding Grace?
No, it was Saving Grace, which was a working title. Then my editor, Sarah Canton, suggested Finding Grace along with a friend of mine. And it was it took months to change the name, but we changed it and it was fine. And I love the title now.
Yeah, we do too. What do you hope readers take away from this story?
I think questions. I think that I'm a writer that really wants to pose questions. I don't want to answer them. I think that if I can, one thing I took away without sort of having any expectation to do that was that my mum rang me and said, I'm so happy that I read about the nuances of these conversations about when people are having children. I didn't know any of this information. And I'm really happy to read it in the context of and not I want to make sure I speak to people in the right way. Not that there's a right way or a wrong way, but she was really grateful for the kind of insight into the the sensitivities around having children, and it was something I wasn't expecting. So maybe a little bit of insight into that, if it's never come across, their life, that would be really cool. But I don't have any expectations. I think people get books their way, and I know I never want to kind of impede on that. That's not my kind of way.
Well, we love the questions that this book raised, and we can't wait to have more questions raised from you because they are so thoughtful, and the way that you go about them is so intriguing and unique. And we're just so grateful to have read your book.
Well, I'm very, very touched to have been asked on. So thank you for reading in. Thank you for spending the time talking about it. It's my dream.
Thank you. Are there any other questions before we grab a photo with Loretta?
Real quick, what kind of dogs do you have?
I have two mutts, and I have a rescue German Shepherd from Los Angeles who is completely, she's all black with a tiny bit of brown on her front leg.
Love mutts.
I've got my eye on something else, but my husband is deleting my internet history, so I can't find the link.
Aw, I love that. Okay. Any other questions? If you've got your book or audiobook, could we grab a quick
I have
picture?
We love to take a photo at the end of our
It's such
chat.
a good idea.
Yeah.
Um, let me get this ready. Okay. Okay, ready? 1, 2. Okay, smile. Got it.
Yay.
Loretta, thank you. This was such a joy to have you, and we are just so thrilled for you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so thrilled you liked it. I'm very, very happy. It's a truly, when I say it's a dream, I'm not. It's amazing, and I'm really glad to have come on because actually this is the only time I've been in this environment, and it's really wonderful.
Aw.
Yeah, it's amazing to create a book club. So well done.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Loretta.
Thank you.
Bye,
Good luck.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.